What's going on, everyone? My name is Jake, this is Where I Talk Capes, and today we are here to talk about X-Men because the rumours have finally began and we're finally seeing the news that the X-Men is about to start casting. We saw the reports coming out that Marvel are apparently about to start casting X-Men, as well as the fact that Marvel are going to be looking at lesser known actors and not so many A-list and top tier celebrities for these roles as a sort of cost cutting and money saving method, which I completely think is fair, especially considering how many people will need to cast for an effective X-Men movie. To be fair, I'm never one that thinks big A-list celebrities are entirely necessary for X-Men movies, but I also don't think that Marvel have helped themselves, considering they've set a precedent where Robert Downey Jr. can just demand $80 million for two movies, and then he gets $80 million for two movies to play a character he's got no business playing. But you know, that aside, I'm very excited for the X-Men going forward. So I just wanted to come on here with my wish list for the X-Men. So here's a few things that I want for the X-Men, a few things that I think are sort of, in my mind anyway, necessary for a good X-Men movie. I don't want to come on with a big pitch. I don't have a big pitch, obviously. I've done casting videos with Ewan before, and I do want to do more of those because we didn't end up doing our last one with sort of other various assorted X-Men. But I just wanted to come on here, and there's a few things that are, in my mind, some essential, some I would just prefer, but some things I really want to get to. So I'm going to go through the essential ones first, and then after there we'll talk about the other ones that I just think would be nice. This is just in general my wish list for the MCU's X-Men movies. Okay, the number one thing I think is the most important for these movies isn't something we're going to see on screen, or not in terms of within the world they are creating. It is something we'll see on screen, but not in terms of the canon of the MCU, I suppose. The thing I want to see the most is freedom, creative freedom for Jake Schreier and his writing team, because I never ended up actually getting the time between work and life and other things to make my full spoilers video with the Fantastic Four, and it's probably a little bit too late now to make my full spoilers video on the new Fantastic Four movie, but I absolutely adored it. However, one of the things I would have pointed out in that is that it's very, very clear that Kevin Feige had final say on the edit, because there's quite a lot that feels missing from that movie, and spoiler warning now for the Fantastic Four. I suppose little spoiler warning for the Fantastic Four First Steps is that it's jarring. It's a little bit over 2 hours and it feels like it's a 2.5 hour movie. The fight with the Red Ghost is cut. We see a little bit of his ape. Obviously we saw John Malkovich in the trailer, but they just kind of gloss over that. The fight with the Red Ghost is entirely cut from this movie, but there's something that I feel is missing with it, in that I feel like we don't have enough of the Silver Surfer. I feel like there's at least 2 different scenes, including the Silver Surfer, that have been cut. I feel like there's a scene of her sort of reflecting on what she's done and her life as a Herald of Galactus, and I also feel like there's probably a scene that we don't see, and I mean, obviously I don't know for a fact, but it feels as though there was at least at one point a scene where she goes back to her home world, to the world that she saved by offering her services to be a Herald of Galactus, to choose the worlds for Galactus to consume. It feels like there's something missing, because I don't want to really get into the plot of it, but there's a big thing the Silver Surfer does that just kind of feels like it came out of nowhere, and I feel like there's some stuff missing with her. I also feel like there's a lot missing with Ben. I feel like because Ben's character's kind of the most fully formed throughout, it kind of feels like they were like, oh, we don't need to do as much character stuff with Ben because we all get it. So I feel like there is a good 20 to 30 minutes of that movie missing, and I don't want to see that with the X-Men. I don't want to watch the X-Men and go, that was good, but like, why did Mystique do this? We just have to fill in the blanks in our mind, or whatever, or even if we have been told, not even kind of seeing Mystique ruminating on a decision she maybe makes, that Mystique's a character I've just kind of plucked out of thin air there. But my first thing that I really want to see with these movies, and a thing that I think is going to be so key to the success of these movies, is just allowing the total creative freedom for the creatives. And I understand that at this point Marvel is the machine, and Marvel is the this big thing, and Kevin Feige made it this big thing, and obviously he's and I don't want to take anything away from the successes of Kevin Feige. He is a genius. He very clearly cares about these characters and these things. Obviously he was like sneaking comic books to people when he was a production assistant or maybe a producer or whatever he was doing on the original X-Men movies, after Bryan Singer was like, we don't read comic books here or whatever, and I appreciate that. However, one of the biggest successes of Thunderbolts is the fact that it's very clear Jake Schreier had very little studio intervention. And it's very clear that he was allowed to kind of tell the story that he wanted to tell with these people whose lives have fallen apart, and this dynamic of all these hectic characters and stuff like that. And I just think if we allow him to have that level of freedom on a project as high stakes as the X-Men, there's no way he can fuck it up. If he was allowed that amount of freedom for the Thunderbolts, and the Thunderbolts is one of the best Marvel movies in a very, very long time, if he is then told, we're giving you that same freedom, we're trusting you, you get final edit, basically, we're not going to cut nothing that you don't want cut, that's just going to empower him to create the best possible story. And if he's writing this and he's directing this, he knows what he has in his mind. And I understand it's going to be made in collaboration with Feige, and Feige's obviously going to be saying, oh, we want to maybe save this for later or stuff like that. But the one thing, that the most important thing to me is ensuring, I don't want to necessarily say total creative freedom to Jake Schreier, but if we look at the successes of Superman, where Gunn was allowed to just make the Superman movie he wanted without any intervention, and it kind of feels like Jake Schreier was allowed to make the Thunderbolts movie he wanted with at the very most very minimal studio intervention. That's what I want to see for the X-Men. The second thing I want to see is, I want to see the First Class. I just want to see the First Class. I want to see the first story be told about that original group. I do want to see the mansion and the school be fleshed out, but I want to watch it where the First Class are well defined within themselves. I want Angel, Beast, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Iceman. That's what I want. It's the initial X-Men movie. It's those characters that's who I want to see. And I want Bobby to be younger. I do want Bobby to feel school-aged. I want the rest of them maybe all be teachers at the school. I want them to kind of feel like that. Maybe Angel a little bit older, but maybe not fully into like the teacher age. But I want that initial story to be told about the First Class, because I feel like a lot of those characters are ones that feel underserved. I could go for hours and hours and hours and talk about how Fox wrote Cyclops, and I hate how Fox wrote Cyclops. Cyclops is the leader of the X-Men. Cyclops should always be the leader of the X-Men. And most importantly, Cyclops shouldn't feel like a whiny bitch, which they were like, well, Wolverine's cool and he smokes cigars, so this other guy's going to be a whiny bitch. This guy's a whiny bitch, this guy's cool. And I hate that. And I want the First Class to be treated with the sort of level of respect and care that those characters deserve as the beginning of the X-Men. And that's not to say we can't, maybe get a glimpse at Kitty Pryde in the X-Mansion, and that's not to say we can't hear about Wolverine doing his whatever off in the distance, but I want the main focus of this first film to be on the First Class. And I guess that leads me into my third point: do Cyclops right. Do right by Cyclops. Do right by the character of Scott Summers. Scott Summers is one of my favourite characters in all of comic books. I don't think he's my favourite mutant. My favourite mutant is probably Magneto, but in terms of, we're talking just member of the X-Men, constant member of the X-Men, seen as like one of the good guys. I know Magneto's kind of chops and changes depending on who's writing it and what's going on and stuff like that. But it's probably Scott. I'm probably taking Scott over Wolverine. I'm taking Cyclops over Wolverine a lot of the time, apart from when we talk about the Fox movies, because they made Scott a whiny bitch. Now, I've still not watched X-Men 97, but by all accounts, that show understood that Scott is the leader, and they treated him as such, and with the great level of respect that character deserves. And thank God. So I'm very confident that's going to happen, but I just need that to be the case in these movies. And another thing that I want to put on my list here, for my wish list, is I don't want Magneto to be played as an outright villain. I'm currently rewatching the Fox movies just because Cineworld are showing old X-Men movies. So I watched X-Men, and then I watched X2 in the cinema. I watched The Last Stand there, literally just before I recorded this video. And I have a lot of fun with Ian McKellen's Magneto, and I understand that in the later movies they change it up and they obviously make him a more sympathetic character. But I'm watching The Last Stand, and I'm completely on Magneto's side. I am with Magneto. I'm watching it, and I'm supposed to be cheering for the X-Men here, and yeah, obviously Magneto's just killing whoever is in his way, but he has a reason to be doing it. And yeah, I'm kind of sick of the whole, the villain has a point. Yeah, look, there's two sides to every story. We're centrists, things that Marvel kind of like to do. But, Republicans buy sneakers too. But I don't want to see him portrayed as an outright villain at all. I don't even want to have one movie where he is portrayed as the outright villain. I don't ever want to see that. Maybe down the line we can do something where we build to it, but where we begin, I want Magneto to feel heroic to people. I want us to understand why people are joining his cause, why people are fighting on his side. Or to be completely honest with it, I'm okay with him not being in that first movie as a villain. I'm okay with him maybe being a teacher at the school and then something changes, or he's not leading the Brotherhood because he wants to live a more peaceful life, but something changes. I want to see that, because we should feel that way about Magneto. He's not a villain. I mean, he can be, but he's not evil, is what I should say. I suppose that then leads me on to the next thing that I want for this movie, is I want to see villains we've never seen before. I want to see, Mr. Sinister. I'm just going to say it. I want Mr. Sinister. I don't care if it's in the first movie. I don't care if it's in the second movie. I don't want to see Essex Corp. I don't want to hear about Nathaniel Essex. I don't want to hear about this guy who's maybe doing all these experiments, or hear about this guy from the Victorian times, this sort of gentleman scientist. I don't want that. I want Mr. Sinister in one of these movies. I need Mr. Sinister in these movies. Take it back then, probably the last two things on my list of needs. I want to see the school treated with more respect. I want to see the school play a larger part in the story as a whole. Now, maybe not necessarily dedicating big chunks of the movies to the life at the school and the dynamics at the school and the younger mutants at the school and stuff like that. However, maybe we do a show that's sort of set in the school, and it's a show about we're building the next generation of mutants, and maybe in there we can see, Kamala Khan probably be going to the school. That's probably a way that would get people to watch that, because that's someone that you know from things in the show, or in the school rather, or I'm guessing the show as well. But I want to see the school treated as more than just a plot device. I want the school to feel alive. I want the school to feel like a central part of this universe. I want the school to feel like something that ties the mutants together. I want it to feel like the central hub of the mutant story, which, I mean, it is, but I want it to feel alive and bustling and real. And not just within the students. I want to see the teachers. I want to see older mutants kind of come in and out and be teachers and learn and help and develop. And again, just feel like how it should feel as a school. I don't want it to feel like some mutant training facility. I want it to feel like a school, and I want it to be treated with a great deal of importance. And then, I suppose, the last thing on my list of needs, it's more something I don't need. I don't need to see Wolverine right away. I don't. Yeah, I have a person I will have in mind for Wolverine, who I would like to be Wolverine, but I don't see the need for Wolverine right away. Especially because we with what the Fox movies did, they kind of treated Scott as a secondary character to Wolverine. I feel like a lot of the public consensus and general opinion on Wolverine is that he is the main character of the X-Men, but he's a very popular character, he's a very good character, obviously, he's great. But if I want Scott's image to be rehabbed, which I do, we kind of need to lay off Wolverine. We need to show people that Scott isn't the whiny fucking bitch they made James Marsden Scott be, and do something, and do something interesting with him in a world where we don't have Wolverine. Maybe have a Wolverine solo movie that is its own thing, and it's away from the school, and maybe at the end he hears about the school, or something brings him to the school. But I don't want to have Wolverine involved in the first X-Men story. And I'm like I say, I'm okay with going 2 X-Men movies before we find out who Wolverine is, before we bring Wolverine into the fold. Oh, and then I guess this is actually the last need. I want a dark-skinned actor to play Storm, because Storm is a dark-skinned character. I just feel like that should go without saying, but that's my last one on the list. So then, what are some things I want? Some things that I'm kind of more malleable on. Some things that I'm not like so certain about. Just things I would kind of like to see, as opposed to things I'm like, this is if I'm in charge, this is what I'm doing. This is some things that I think would be fun. I'd like to see some horror elements blended in. I think X-Men can work in a horror space. Obviously, we saw that show with Dan Stevens. What's it called? That's what it's called. I can't remember the name of that show. Obviously, the current run on the Ultimate X-Men as well is sort of really leaning into horror and stuff like that. And I think blending horror into comic books anyway, of places that you don't really expect to see it, is always something that I enjoy. Obviously, you got a lot of that through Joker stories in the New 52 when he cut his face off or whatever. And then again, if we want to look at horror elements being blended into comics as well, again, it's over in DC, but the current run on Poison Ivy by G. Willow Wilson and Marcia Takara is incredible. It folds in a lot of like body horror elements, stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that it has to go full horror rated R movie for the X-Men. The X-Men shouldn't be that, I don't think. But you look at when we allowed Raimi to put in the horror elements into Multiverse of Madness, a movie that I will hear no other opinions on. That movie fucking is incredible. But using horror as a tool for the X-Men is something that can work really, really well. And I would like to see it blended in and folded in. I don't need to see an outright X-Men horror movie, but I think it could work. There's ways to do it, and I really do think it can work. I would also like to see some mutants we haven't really seen before on screen. Obviously, we did get Kitty Pryde with Elliot Page, but we didn't get lots of stuff with Kitty Pryde. Obviously, we got Gambit in Deadpool and Wolverine, and then also in X-Men Origins Wolverine, but I would like to see a focus kind of placed on them. Maybe Gambit probably not in the school, but I'd like to see a focus placed on mutants we haven't really been allowed to place the focus on before. And I understand I just said I want the first movie to be about the First Class, but as we kind of expand the world out, I don't want us to just go for the ones that are proven to work before. Wolverine and all those kind of bigger names. I want to see more fun things get adapted, and I want to see like we get into like shit like the Marauders and stuff like that. Like, I want to see World of Mutants be expanded out, and I want to have us touch on the mutants that we don't really think about a lot, and kind of see this wider world than what we've just been given through the Fox movies and things like that. Because I know the Fox movies are primarily a lot of people's point of reference and frame of reference for the X-Men. I also just don't want to rush. I don't want to rush to The Cure. I don't want to rush to Days of Future Past. I don't want to rush to Dark Phoenix. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm okay if we don't do Dark Phoenix for 15 years. Okay? I don't care if we treat Dark Phoenix the way we treated Thanos in Endgame. I don't care if we have to get through multiple phases before we do the Phoenix Saga or whatever, or the Phoenix phase or whatever the fuck. We're in the multiverse saga right now, but if we do the Phoenix Saga, I'd care if we do the Mutant Saga first and then we do that. I don't care if it's 20 years before we do the Phoenix. I really don't care. I don't want to see them rush, and I want to see them look at lesser known X-Men stories, and I want to see them pull from lesser known X-Men runs, and I want to see them put a lot of focus on, like I say, characters and stories we haven't seen before. And then my last thing that I think would be fun, I want Nightcrawler in the school. I want Nightcrawler to be school-aged, or maybe like early 20s. I don't want Nightcrawler to be a full-grown man. I want Nightcrawler to feel young, because I think that's, to me, how I read him. I want Nightcrawler to be Sonny Solich, to be perfectly honest with you, but I think there's a lot of fun there. And again, I'm not entirely fussed about rushing to get to the island and stuff like that, So yeah, that's kind of my wish list here for the MCU's X-Men. Let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Let me know anything that you would add, anything that you would take out, anything that you think is maybe more essential than I'm putting weight on it, maybe anything you put is maybe less essential than the importance I'm giving to it. I really want to know your thoughts and what you would do and what you want to see within the X-Men when it comes to the MCU down below. But once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends with the handsome man on YouTube with the good X-Men opinions. Once again, guys, my name is Jake. This is where I talk capes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.